NATO leaders will meet next week in Lithuania, convening nearly a year and a half into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Though Ukraine is not a member, the alliance is supporting Kyiv with billions of dollars in weapons and aid. At issue during the upcoming meeting, revamping collective defense plans and alliance expansion. White House correspondent Laura Barrón-López, who will be traveling to the summit, sets the table.
In the east and south, Ukraine's counteroffensive to reclaim their land is making slow progress. Ukrainian soldiers now fire on Russian fighters from positions previously held by Russia. They've seized their trenches, but also their dead.
You can see all these flies here and some fresh ground. Some Russian soldier already rests in here. It might smell bad as we go further.
Ukraine's advance comes ahead of a key NATO summit in Lithuania next week, as the near 75-year-old alliance tries to present a united front against the very foe it was designed to defeat, Russia.
Our summit will send a clear message. NATO stands united, and Russia's aggression will not pay.
This is probably one of the most consequential NATO summits that we have seen in quite some time.
Rachel Rizzo is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and an expert on European security and transatlantic relations.
It's time for the alliance to answer some pretty big questions, not only in terms of their own territorial defense, questions about NATO expansion, but more specifically, what is Ukraine's future relationship with NATO going to look like?
Helping Ukraine move toward NATO membership.
A critical issue on NATO's agenda, Ukraine's access to the alliance. In 2008, NATO leaders agreed that Ukraine could eventually join, but there is no clear consensus yet on how and when that will happen. The Baltic states, formerly part of the Soviet Union, want a clear timetable for Ukraine to join NATO, but the US and Germany have been more cautious, fearing it might escalate the conflict.
We don't want cracks and fissures between different NATO allies to start bubbling to the surface, not only for Ukraine, but for NATO itself, for the strength of the alliance. It's going to be very important for each and every ally to come together and present a united front.
Mr. President, are you going to make it easier for Ukraine to join NATO? No.
For now, the president remains at odds with other alliance members over fast-tracking Ukrainian membership. But one small step under consideration is removing the Membership Action Plan requirement, known as MAP, for Ukraine.
An important part of a MAP, if you will, a Membership Action Plan, is this matter of mature democratic institutions.
Doug Lute had a 35-year career in the U.S. Army and is a former U.S. ambassador to NATO.
Ukraine, even before the war, is still an emerging democracy with immature democratic institutions. If the Membership Action Plan is set aside, there will still be due attention paid to these democratic values.
I think there's broad consensus right now that there's no pathway for Ukraine to join the alliance before the war with Russia ends. The immediate priority is trying to figure out how to continue supporting Ukraine with weapons and economic aid so that it can eventually be victorious.
The U.S. is the largest contributor of aid to Ukraine, committing more than $37.6 billion in weapons and other equipment. But it has been reluctant to send long-range precision missiles, known as ATACMS, and cluster munitions, until today. The White House announced it now plans to provide cluster munitions, which are outlawed for use by most countries. They release bomblets that don't always explode on impact and can later kill civilians.
I think we are at a point in the Ukrainian war where there are already many munitions that litter the battlefield, and the positive impact on the battlefield of these munitions, if provided, outweighs continued concern for unexploded ordnance. So I think it's overall in our advantage.
Another big decision expected at next week's summit, the first revamp of NATO's military plan since the Cold War. Under its new plans, NATO aims to have 300,000 troops ready to deploy to its eastern flank within 30 days to defend against a Russian threat. And it's charted a specific military strategy for each region in the alliance.
There'll be a specific plan for the northern part of the alliance, so the Arctic, the Nordic countries, the North Atlantic itself. There'll be one for the central region of the alliance, and there'll be one for the south across the Mediterranean. And across those specific areas, NATO will, for the first time in the last 30 years, assign forces. So they're getting much more specific in response to the obvious Russian challenges.
But NATO's new plan is expensive, and its ability to implement it depends on members' defense spending. In 2014, leaders committed to spend 2% of their GDP on their military budgets by 2024. But so far, only 7 of 31 member countries meet that threshold. The 31st, Finland, is the newest to join since 2020, and it holds the longest border with Russia. It became a NATO member in April, after Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan lifted objections last year for Finland and Sweden to join the alliance.
I want to particularly thank you for what you did putting together the situation with regard to Finland and Sweden.
But the process for Sweden has been far slower. Turkey won't allow Sweden to join unless it extradites Kurdish separatists it considers terrorists. And President Erdogan says Stockholm's efforts so far, including a new terrorism law, aren't enough. But President Zelensky today warned indecision weakens the alliance.
I believe that while the issue of Sweden's admission to NATO has not yet been resolved, and the issue of Ukraine's invitation has not been resolved, there is little unity in this. It is a threat to the strength of the alliance, and that is why we expect at least some steps toward a positive outcome. This is very important for the security of the whole world.
I think it's looking unlikely that this impasse is going to be worked out before the NATO summit, but this is going to be a space where everyone is going to be watching very closely, and let's hope that if it doesn't happen at Vilnius, it happens soon thereafter.
For the past 16 months, the world watched as Russian missiles battered Ukraine, and the conflict re-energized the alliance. An alliance that Biden has spent the majority of his presidency working to unify. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Barrón-López.